Hello, Monetization Nation. Welcome back to another episode with Gordon Glenister, an expert in influencer marketing and the author of Influencer Marketing Strategy. In the last episode, we discussed the benefits of online communities and memberships. Today, we will discuss 3 secrets of influencer marketing. There's another strategy we've been talking a lot about on the show, and it's called passion marketing to help address this attention economy issue. And what we do is we find the level 10 passions, the highest level passions of our ideal customers. And then we build our entire business, our products and our services and our messaging around helping people achieve those highest priorities in their lives. And I don't know if you have any thoughts for us on that passion marketing strategy or examples.
Well, I tell you what I do believe in is that people are now less interested in sheer product advertising. It's as much about cause advertising. Is what do you believe in? What is your passion? Is it saving the planet? Is it gender equality? Is it some of the sustainability, which of course is a big topic. So I think what particularly amongst Gen Zs and millennials, people want to know that when I buy from you, what difference are you making as well? I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, but it's another added benefit as to why somebody would want to buy from you. Or equally, the reverse is true. If an employer is not seen to be looking after his staff, or is just not sending the right messages out, that can work against them as well. People love to know that it's a great place to work, and I love it when you get CEOs. And we did this in the report, actually, the social CEO report that I alluded to a little bit earlier. We were looking at individuals that were really passionate about something. So there's an individual in there that was the CEO of the Wildlife Trust, and of course what he did is he took lots of pictures of nature. He looked of rivers and wildlife and all of those bits and pieces. So you really felt that he was living and breathing what he was talking about. I always think passion is linked to sort of storytelling as well. And if you look at some of the best performing posts on social media, they are the human interest elements, the ones that have a bit heartfelt. We react a whole lot more to emotion than just promotional broadcast. We don't want the sort of over selfie, over curated, photoshopped imagery. What we want to know is what's at the heart of that individual, that person, that brand.
Okay, you talked a little bit earlier about a report that you generated. It's the COVID impact report. Mm-hmm. Can you share with us some of the key takeaways from that? Because obviously this pandemic and the impact of that pandemic is a huge tectonic shift that's changing the business landscape. What can we learn from that impact report you created?
Yeah, well, there were a number of things the reason why I wanted to do this report is because I wanted to see how trade associations were going to be impacted. So many of them will have made revenue from in-person events, from award ceremonies, from membership, meeting people, meeting their members together. And what came out of it was that, well, at the time, of course, Nathan, don't forget, we didn't know how long this was going to last for. So some people believed that they would weather the storm and that they thought, well, actually, all of our education and our conferences and our in-person, we're just going to put them back. So, of course, what was March last year was then decided to put back until later in the autumn. But, of course, the autumn never came either. And of course, this was a big issue for the venues because a lot of the time the associations would have had to have paid down payments and deposits. Never before has somebody looked at their terms and conditions and insurance policies as they did last year. But because COVID was a new disease, it was in most cases uninsured. So there was a real cash exposure for some of these organisations. I mean, some of the venues were very supportive in being able to put those things back. The other thing that was a big difference was lobbying. So you can imagine governments, normally they would see representations from trade associations from time to time, but literally every association known to man was trying to lobby government at the same time. And that was totally, unworkable. So what happened is many associations combined together. The typical, very good example of this was the Advertising Association. And the Advertising Association UK actually represents 14 other industry bodies. And they said they were having weekly meetings with government. And in those meetings, the government ministers and the various civil servants were saying this has been one of the most productive ways for us to reach out to industry that we've ever seen before. Normally, to get all these people together in one place would be really challenging. And as you rightly said earlier, because something was forced upon them, the speed of which they acted was like 20 times quicker. They talked about it, policy making on the hoof, but nevertheless it was very, very productive on both sides. So the associations were learning more about government and vice versa. So that was really productive, and that may form a blueprint for the future. And then the thing I alluded to a bit earlier was the fact that some of these events that they were considering and worrying about, when they put them online, they realised that they could reach a global audience where they wouldn't have before. And whilst the ticket price would have dropped substantially, they were able to still make a profit in some instances. Now, that said, there were some associations that were really suffering, like in the hospitality industry, the events industry, the promotional merchandise industry, because they were directly impacted. And of course, a lot of their members that were closed for business just couldn't afford the membership fee. So, it was a tale of two halves. Some people have benefited from this pandemic, and others have been, I wouldn't say decimated, but severely impacted.
Let's go to your book for a bit. So you've written an industry-leading book now on influencer marketing. Can you share with us a couple of the best examples from your book of companies that implemented really effective influencer marketing campaigns and strategies?
Yeah, so there's a company agency called Brave Bison. And Brave Bison were a big social media agency, PR agency, global actually, and they ran a campaign with the Internet Watch Foundation. Now, this was going to be a very, very sensitive campaign. So they had to reach the right type of influencers and the right type of campaign. So they decided to tackle what is going to be a sensitive issue by using comedy. So they reached out to two influencers, Aaron Kraskell and Iman, who is an Arsenal football player. Aaron Kraskell, by the way, is a big, what do you call them, influencer, but he does these prankster videos and stuff like that. Yeah, and together they have about 5 million followers on their respective networks. So. What actually happened is the first piece of content they did. So Aaron did an Arsenal football outfit, which for those of you that don't know is a well-known football team in the UK, with Tottenham Hotspur socks, which is their biggest rival. So it's the equivalent of having two football teams, soccer teams in America that are really. So you can imagine the level of engagement, not all good, that he had. What's going on? This doesn't look right. And then Aaron was at the gym and he was trying to lift some weights, and he had, but in the mirror behind, you could see there were two people holding the weights. So of course people then interacted and said, what's going on? This doesn't look right. And then 24 hours later, they then shared another post, which was saying, you probably wondered why the post looked a bit odd. It didn't look quite right. Well, there's a reason for that, because we are talking about the Internet Watch Foundation. And if you see indecent images online that just don't look right, please refer them to the Internet Watch Foundation. And I have to say, the campaign was a phenomenal success. It had something like 8 million views, 5.6 million views on Instagram, and it was multiple times higher than the average engagement rate on. I think it's normally about 1.6% engagement rate on Instagram. They had 4.3, I think it was. So significantly better than that. So that was a great campaign. And the second one I'm actually going to share is around my book launch, if I may.
And hold on really quick before we go on to the next one. What are the key takeaways we can learn from that first?
Okay.
Example.
So the key takeaways is, well, first of all, do your research. If you're looking around trying to find influencers, that is the biggest challenge that people face. So, and it's very, very time consuming, which is why sometimes there are agencies that specialize in this. What you want to do is you want to make sure that those influencers really understand and feel passionately about the cause, because that content will only have worked well if those guys were on board with because bearing in mind this was a very sensitive subject that they were addressing, and it had to be right. And so, yeah, that's the takeaway, really. Do your research, which is my general takeaway with influencer marketing. Research, before doing anything else. And if I may, the second one I'm actually going to share with you was my LinkedIn post for my book launch. I decided to have an online book launch because we were in a pandemic and I had no choice because the publisher said it's got to be on this date. So we had over 100 people to the book launch, which was fantastic. But the post that I did on LinkedIn involved pretty much as many people as were contributors towards the book. So I had over 45 people that had contributed in interviews to my book, and I tagged them on my LinkedIn post. But I'd also put a very personal picture. And I talked earlier about personal stories sell, when you're putting a post out there, you want to be authentic, and I like to think I am. But I was able to say, use the post as a thank you and a recognition piece. So although it was a promotion about my book, it wasn't about a promotion. It was about a recognition and a thank you and an element of a journey that I'd gone through. So there were moments where I hated writing the book and I put that in there because people want to see the good, the bad and the ugly. And then, of course, a nice picture of me with the books. Anyway, cut a long story short, I had over 16,000 views, 145 comments and 15 reshares of that post. So, but unfortunately, Nathan, can you imagine if I was creating a post on about influencer marketing and I hadn't got many views, so I had to make it work. The takeaway there was be authentic, share some ups and downs. People love that. They don't like promotional broadcasts all the time. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to be part of a limited engagement pod. And that means that you've got a bunch of people where you really do just support each other's posts. And what I happened to do there is I spoke to a few friends and I said I was going to post this at 8 o'clock in the morning. Could you comment and add some thoughts on it? And they said, sure, that's fine. And of course, because I'm sure you know how the algorithm works, if people comment very quickly on a post, that LinkedIn pushes it out, faster and quick, faster and to a greater number of people. And that's, of course, what I wanted anyway. So, yeah.
Love it. If you had to share with us your 3 most important secrets to influencer marketing, what would those be?
Well, definitely one of them I've already shared is to be authentic. I tend to talk about, educate somebody, inspire somebody or entertain them. Those are the three things I often talk about. But you can add authenticity on top of it. But you've got to remember that what difference are you making to your audience? It's not just doing something for the sake of it. And I think lastly, to sort of finish, is just keep an eye on your exemplars and your competitors. What are they doing? Are there any tricks? Because if they're speaking to the same audience, there could be some things that they're doing you're missing. I mean, yes, you want to be your own self, but you don't want to miss a trick as well. So keep an eye on your competition and exemplars.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. We don't have to start everything from scratch. Before we start something new, let's see what the leaders in the space have done and then figure out how we can innovate it and make it uniquely us.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
What makes a great influencer marketing campaign?
What makes a great influencer marketing campaign? I think, well, first and foremost is you've got to set the right goals. You can't measure the effectiveness of a campaign if you've not set the right goals. So are you trying to create greater brand awareness? Are you trying to drive sales? Are you and downloads for an app or for your conference? Are you trying to get people to come to your website? And when people say, "Oh, I'm trying to do all of those things," well, there's a different tactic for those different strategies. So it's important that you understand what those are. I think when it comes to what will make a difference is the right influencers and the right content, quite frankly. So sometimes you can see amazing content creators that aren't necessarily amplifiers. Photographers are very good examples of this. You see, wow, that is amazing. They would be great for my product, but they may only have 3,000 or 1,000 followers on Instagram, and you might say, I want to work with that individual for their content creation, and I want to pay for that, and I want to use that on my marketing collateral, my website, and my social media. Then there's an amplifying influencer that has got 100,000 followers, but you also need to make sure that you've done your due diligence. Make sure that their follower base is authentic and not bought followers. You need to make sure that you've got an understanding of their follower gender profile, of their geolocation. So I was speaking to somebody recently, for example, who was about to use a female influencer, fashion influencer, and I was able to tell them that 65% of their follower base were based in America, which for a UK brand that they were looking to promote would have meant that their only available audience is the difference, is that sort of 35%. And then if a big percentage of that was male, then, and it's a female targeted brand, then the audience availability is reduced still further. So, and that's why there are amazing influencer marketing sourcing tools out there that you can subscribe to, or there are influencer marketing agencies that you can work with to enable you to make sure that you get the right people. And it's not to say that nobody can do that themselves. It just takes time, and a lot of a failed influencer marketing campaign is when there aren't any goals set, there aren't any brand guidelines, brief, contracts in place, the advertising disclosures aren't right, there isn't real alignment in the influencer and the brand. So, it's important that you go through a process, and that is exactly what I cover in the book.
What are the greatest benefits that a business receives by working with influencers?
Well, it's another individual advocating your brand. So if you think about a brand and they start to tell the story from, try to sell you a product, well, of course they would say that, wouldn't they? But when you've got another individual that is independent but selling your story in a way that is authentic, then that can be phenomenally impactful. And of course, what it could do is it could reach a wider audience, a new market. I have countless examples of where brands have found brand new audiences purely and simply because of an influencer marketing campaign. Another example is getting real insight in product research. So there was an example of an agency that had a Brazilian branch, and they got a client to work with them on designing a new product with influencers. So they flew a handful of influencers over to this retreat in Brazil for I think 3 or 4 days, and they were creating the entire advertising mission statement, pretty much the whole shooting match. But whilst this was going on, all the influencers were connecting with their audiences and getting their intel and their feedback. So you can imagine it's not just 3 people in the room, it's hundreds of thousands of people that are involved in this entire process of building this brand. So of course, when this brand then came to be launched, you can imagine the impact, because all of those follower consumers felt they've been involved in the process from the very conception right the way through to the final product delivery.
Thank you so much, Gordon, for sharing your stories and insights with us today. Here are some of my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, influencer marketing can increase customer trust, expand our reach, and help us with product research and insight. Number 2, we should be authentic. We want to work with influencers who already love our brand and have a real, engaging following. Number 3, influencer marketing requires research. We should research influencers, research our competitors, and research market trends. Number 4, we should determine the purpose of our marketing campaigns and what value we want to provide for our customers. Do we want to educate, entertain, or inspire? To learn more about or connect with Gordon, you can find him on LinkedIn, listen to his podcast, or read his book. And there's links to each of those sites in the blog post for this episode at monetizationnation.com. You can also get a free ebook about passion marketing and learn how to become a top priority of your ideal customers at passionmarketing.com. You can also subscribe to Monetization Nation on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, our Facebook group, and on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and I wish you success in your influencer marketing. Do you want to become a better digital monetizer? To receive great monetization stories and secrets, please go to monetizationnation.com and join free. And if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the show and share it.